thoughts about how a perfect implementation process works and how their process and what they look for in the implementation process as well. So if we could possibly just start off with Daryl, if you could just introduce yourself for 10 seconds, that would be great.
Okay, Daryl Johnson. I'm the Sheikh Manager at Smith Brothers Contracting based in Elland, West Yorkshire. 40 years experience mainly in utilities.
Thanks, Daryl.
Cheers.
Good to have you on here today. Lauren, and then over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Mason. Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm a Customer Success Manager here at HandsHQ. So part of my responsibilities is taking our new customers through the onboarding process. So that's getting everyone set up on HandsHQ and then taking them forward as customers as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lauren. Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for your time again today. Rob Bullen. I am the Health and Safety Specialist, or the Safety Guy of HandsHQ. I joined the business about 12 months ago. I probably told my story before. I spent 10 years in construction in a health and safety capacity, and I implemented HandsHQ with Integral JLL back in 2016, but I've been looking at implementing SaaS products for businesses I've worked for since about 2012. So I wanted to share with you good selves any knowledge and points that I can impart onwards. And for those that have been to our sessions before, you know we try and keep quite a conversationalist approach. If there's any questions at all we can help with, please do pop them in the chat. I've done a couple of extra questions in here as well that you may want to consider, and really appreciate any of your input and any of your insight there. So we're all sharing and we're all learning. So as Mason rightfully said earlier, our final session on the digitalization webinar is around implementing SaaS. Just as a reminder, that is software as a service. And we want to try and keep it universal and share some tricks and tips that we've learned on our journey to get it right, basically. We want to make sure that we get the most from a product that we're looking to implement. So we firstly want to look at what onboarding is. We'll move into those tricks and tips that the three of us wanted to share on the panel. And then I wanted to spend one final slide talking about some key takeaways across the whole three-part series that we've done. So onboarding. Quite a key word. I guess people have referred to it as other means, but we certainly use the word onboarding. And I think as health and safety professionals, we're very much familiar with the onboarding process. We're either onboarding management systems into a company, we're looking at other projects that we have to manage, and actually more importantly, we have to onboard people into our business, make sure they've got the right health and safety induction, the right competence, and the right awareness of what they should and shouldn't do in our business safe systems of work. So it's probably not unfamiliar territory here. What I found quite useful was how you onboard then a safety product, how it's different. And Lauren, not meaning sort of jump on yourself straight away, but we've had a chat about this before, and I really like the way you describe onboarding here that you've kindly shared with us. So the process of integrating software products into the organization. But what I like about that definition is underneath the three sort of sections or factors that you should consider as part of that onboarding process. Now, if you wouldn't mind, Lauren, I think your wording is much better than mine. Certainly, I do support that. Initial setup's a very useful first step. Making sure we get the training right is absolutely critical. And further deployment, we need to assess the best route for that. If you wouldn't mind expanding on those 3 points and kind of share your expertise about how you see those 3 parts work on an onboarding process.
Oh yeah, thanks, Rob. So yeah, this is just kind of a rough overview of onboarding. For us, onboarding really starts from the moment in which a company commits to using our software, and it's about ensuring that we kind of take that business through the journey of getting set up on HandsHQ, and then starting to use our software and our product moving forward, so they feel as confident and as capable as they can doing so, you know, for as long as possible. And really, those kind of 3 sections, I put them there is because they are so important to get right for any software that you're bringing on board. Getting it set up correctly, it gives you the confidence to then go on and use it and feel like it's solving the problems you intended it to. Training is really important for getting people on board. For the end users, it might not kind of have been them who initially bought into the product. So for any software, training is really that extra step to ensure that you've got buy-in from the rest of the business. And then finally, kind of long-term deployment. That change management is critical to making a software nice and sticky within the business. It means that you're not looking back, you're always looking forward. You're not trying to kind of, there always will be people who try and kind of stick to the old ways and try and keep using what they were previously. And it's trying to encourage people to get on board with the new system is really important. So yeah, it's definitely part of my job, and I think everyone will be using those kind of skills all the time. But it's something that I really focus on here in our business.
Oh, that's some great insight, Lauren. Thank you for that explanation. Certainly better than I could certainly describe it. The point that I wanted to add in here, if I may, was whenever I'm looking at implementing SaaS into businesses, I very much think about the handover internally in the supplier I'm working with. So what I put here is I found often very useful is not just kind of putting up my socks and shoes when the deal's already happened. I want to make sure that the sales team then carry on taking me through that journey. And there's that transition then between the sales securing that deal and moving into implementation with a customer service or customer success team. So I think what's really crucial is to make sure that you feel confident that the sales team will take you through that transition. And because you want to make sure that all those arrangements are still understood. You don't want to re-explain all of your pain points and problems all over again to the next team. So I've always felt for a successful transition of onboarding, we need to make sure that I can see that information flow between the sales and the customer success team. And what you can see is a question here, and please do chip in from your good selves if there's any further information you can share with us. What does your onboarding process look like within your supply chain? Is there a set process you have to follow? Does it depend on the type of product you're bringing in or the type of service being offered? I'm keen to see what else can be learned. And Daryl, if you wouldn't mind, I guess it's a great case study from your good self to understand, what does the Smith Brothers onboarding process look like when you're taking on board a software product? Does it look any different to your current supply chain process, or did it feel quite natural regardless of what you're bringing into the business?
I think it was quite a big step, Rob, really, for Smiths. They've grown over the last few years. They wanted a professional-looking suite of documents. When I joined Smiths, which was Q2 of 2019, they were still unsure. They were speaking to Toby actually at Hands about implementing the system, and they just needed knocking over the line there, I think, on that final push. I just happened to be attending a conference in Manchester over 2 days. The Association of Project Safety did a CDM workshop there. On day 2, the afternoon was all for the delegates to do a presentation on something RAMS related or safety related. And I went with the HandsHQ offering. I used the video off the Hands website there. And we had a good discussion. And to a man and woman, all the delegates were very surprised at how good the system was, and indeed the APS instructor on the day, she was more than impressed, and obviously having seen quite a few systems like this before. So then I got back to Smiths the week after that, and the deal was more or less done then, Rob. The ops director, we had a good look at it. We did the SWOT analysis of the system and what we had already. Inconsistencies was, I guess, the buzzword for what we had previously. People going and doing different things with Word documents that they'd saved previously, all that sort of good stuff, Rob. So yeah, it was a good way to get a consistent flow to our documents. So as Lauren was saying there, we spoke to Toby in the first instance, and then we got Rosh on the pitch, and Rosh and I, in that November, December, we decided we put all the documentation rather into the system, all the staff at Smith Brothers, what their job title was, etc. And then we were good to go. We had a timeline that I wanted to introduce it by January 2020, as early as possible. So Rosh came up to Elland in Huddersfield, and we had a couple of 3 good sessions with the guys. And the rest, I guess, is history. They got the logins that day, and they were up and running.
Oh, that's great to hear, Daryl. Thank you for sharing. And certainly the words that I'm picking out from your onboarding process, if I may, of course, is getting that buy-in from the masses in the business, making sure you're managing the expectations, understanding the pain points so they receive the right training to utilize the system, and I guess driving continuous improvement. And I think that's a really important point in onboarding, making sure there is a reason we're bringing this on board, and we need to make sure it fits right. And I imagine one of the elements then, Daryl, is around your health and safety strategy to make sure we're onboarding the process right to fill those gaps that we've identified previously.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, joking apart, but the fact that a construction phase plan could take anything like 2 days to the 2 or 3 hours that now it takes, you know, that was a massive selling point to our engineers.
That's great. Definitely selling on a return of investment is an absolute key to make sure that that's right. No, thank you for sharing that. That's great. So if I may move on, then I wanted to share some tricks and tips, as do the panel, and I'm afraid I'll be picking on you two again for expanding on these points. But the first one, the one I'm most passionate about, I suppose, is what I call the RACI model. I absolutely feel that to get any project and any software implemented into a business properly, you need to understand all the cogs in the business. And more importantly, they need to understand their role, the cogs in that part of the business. So RACI, you can see, stands for those selected that are responsible for the project, those that are accountable, those that are consulted, and those that need to be informed. And my apologies in advance to everyone if I am teaching you to suck eggs here, but I do feel very passionate about mapping out this RACI model on any project that you roll out. I guess some points are more obvious than others in the RACI model. You know, responsible, if it's myself making sure that the project is implemented in the business, of course I am solely responsible for it. But I always had to be aware that actually my line manager has given me the resource, whether that's time or money, to implement it. So I need to know that he or she's also accountable. I need to give that comfort and confidence that, right, are there certain milestones I need to communicate? What other elements do I need to do around roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities? So if you haven't thought about taking a step back and understanding who in your department, first of all, has a part to play, absolutely is the first part. Then it's looking outside the department of those other cogs that I mentioned. So who else needs to be consulted? Who needs to be informed? I suppose the like with any SaaS product, of course, you need to then make sure, what's the role of my IT department if I do have a separate IT department in-house? Or are the other operations, how are the operations structured? Who do I need to speak to on that side? So although it's probably a simple model and something you've come across before, RACI's absolutely a good starting point would be my recommendation. For those that haven't got RACI templates and you'd like to have some, I'm very active on LinkedIn. You're more than welcome to contact me and I'll be happy to share any of my work there. If I move into the other steps, then I think, Lauren, we talked about these again, and if you wouldn't mind expanding on these, it's so crucial to have that right vision and understand the vision of the customer and also understanding their priorities. You know, what are the deal breakers? What must be delivered? And what are the nice to have, I suppose? Could you kind of talk me through that process and how you embed managing that?
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I think for me, like the most successful customers that we have in our business and kind of starting from the onboarding phase are those that have a really clear vision of what they need the software to do. You know, for any software that, you know, we have a large suite of software that we use ourselves within our business, and the ones that are most successful are the ones that are kind of clearly fulfill a purpose within the business. Everyone understands what that goal is, and as such you have that really clear success criteria. You know, from my perspective as someone helping onboard businesses, it's really useful to have a clear sense of when onboarding is finished. You know, when have we onboarded the system? You know, is it, for example, as Daryl said, it was a timeline. You know, we want to have this done by January 2020, or perhaps for other businesses it's an audit or a client tender, or they're bringing on a new team or a merger, something like that, which is a critical date that can help kind of give a bit of momentum to an onboarding process, is really useful, because it means that it kind of it's easier to kind of bring in resources, ask people for favors if you've got a nice kind of clear timeline within a business. And kind of that brings us on to priorities. Is often when you kind of start an onboarding process, you're seeing the full complete picture, as it were, kind of the paint by numbers, and you're going through and you're doing each one. And I think actually the most important part of onboarding is understanding the structure of the software that you're implementing. You know, what does it absolutely need to do? What are the must-haves? You know, if why did you buy it? You know, if it's not going to do those things, it's not doing its job. Start with those, sink your time into those key goals, and you know, if it's a software that continues to offer you support by account management or training or resources, you can then fill in those details later. In fact, often, you know, our kind of greatest aim is to give people like Daryl the skills to do those changes themselves, to really implement it within the business so it feels part and parcel of your kind of working suite of tools, really. So yeah, I think if I were to give kind of one piece of advice for anyone starting an onboarding process, it's know what you need to be achieving by the end of it. You know, have a clear sense of goals.
Oh, such a valid point, Lauren. And I think what I like about that is I think it resonates with health and safety professionals quite nicely. That vision we have is kind of our health and safety strategy. We always ask ourselves, okay, what's good going to look like? How are we going to get there? And then our favorite phrase is making sure that, well, we can't manage what we can't measure. So we need to understand, what do we need to track to actually show whether something's working or something's not? And we're very attuned as that as safety professionals. So that bit of advice, and thank you for sharing that. I think that will resonate with a lot of people. And if I may jump to the final 2 points, I think Daryl's kind of touched upon these very nicely in the last conversation. Certainly, timeline and preparation is absolutely key. You know, my famous phrase, I call the 6 Ps, but I guess because the curse word, I probably shouldn't really refer to it. But we know what happens if we don't plan properly. It can prevent certain things. But Daryl, if I wouldn't mind asking your good self, with Smith Brothers and bringing on any SaaS product, you know, did you look at building out a timeline with customer success? Who did you need to get involved in communication? And how did you find that process of communicating with others and trying to get those milestones in place?
If I go back to your RACI model, Rob, the responsible guy was the operations director. You know, he'd signed the check off, shall we say? So he wanted the system in place. Accountable, that was me. That was my name under that title. But I didn't want to do it alone and then have the da-da moment and say, this is it, guys and gals, and, you know, not have the buy-in. So Smith Brothers has got 2 kind of departments. There's small works, which is 11 kV work, which is your smaller substations, kind of what you see on every road, you know, at the corner there with about the size of a garage, something like that, with a transformer in and switch gear. So that small works is not F10 notifiable. So they were more concentrated on the RAM side of Hands. So they wanted to get all the risk assessments sorted out for the small works. Then I had another engineer who deals with the large works, solar farms, things like that, 6, 12, 14-month duration projects, which are obviously CDM F10 notifiable. And they were more bothered about the construction phase plan package that you offer. And so, you know, we got the buy-in there about the accountability. And again, I can't stress that, you know, the timeline going into that January 2020, we'd played with the system, we'd made changes, the guys were up to speed with how it worked. And then with Rosh on the pitch as well for the day, it just all clicked, and the success was there, Rob.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing, Darragh. And my apologies, I've realised my connection did dip in and out there. So I did miss a couple of points, sadly. So I need to go back on those, and do correct me if I have repeated myself. So my apologies there, everyone, if I did zone out on there. But luckily, I think the connection's okay now. But that's a great insight and case study, Darragh, to know about that. Thank you very much. Moving to the next part then. So how do we look even further? Initial implementation onboarding, we've kind of heard the story and heard the tips. What other factors do we need to be aware of? And certainly, I guess, with change management, that's not really unfamiliar territory with a health and safety professional. You know, we know, I think I've talked about it before, one of the stress standards in the HSE standard is around change. We know change is a stressor itself. So although we don't have a crystal ball, we do need to make sure what changes are going to be required and who might that upset or who that might help. So really understanding those stakeholders and managing that change process, as Lauren said previously, is absolutely crucial. And I think that's probably why I'm so passionate about RACI, because I can understand the different stakeholders involved and how they may react and how I may need to respond to that. Absolutely, training. I think Darragh talked about Rosh's sessions being sort of delivered correctly, I suppose. And the training, getting it right the first time, is also quite difficult. We don't have a crystal ball of what problems may come up. But I think my advice would be, when you're doing training, go to those first couple of sessions to understand what people's pain points are. Because if you can then timely action those in that room, you can then pass those lessons learned onto other subsequent sessions, and that can be managed effectively. So absolutely, even if you know how to use the SaaS product you're embedding, still go to the first initial sessions to understand how it's set up. And then you can also chip in your opinion of the business, how it then integrates properly. We still need that intellectual property from your good selves about the business. I think, Lauren, we have talked about sort of change and training before. My apologies if there's something else that you'd like to add on that side. Is there anything further you wanted to advise us on?
No, I think actually you said the kind of most important thing I think for training, which is often it can feel like the kind of the handover process back to your account manager or whoever's responsible for training at the software that you're using, whereas actually it's still really important to keep communication through the training process. If someone is there in a training session, kind of within your business, who understands the goals of the product, who understands the kind of the management systems within your business and how the two kind of the product and your systems are going to integrate, it helps someone like me who's delivering that training session, because then I know that any questions that I might get from users are I'm giving them the right answers, and they're being framed from specifically your business, not kind of my more generic understanding of people that use software. So yeah, absolutely. If you can get someone in the sessions who is there to offer guidance and more personal understanding of your business, that's a really good tip, I think.
Oh, that's good to hear. Thank you again, Lauren. I think it's so crucial to keep in mind. My third point there about starting small, I'm always a firm believer of sort of testing before you then release it everywhere. So UAT, for those that aren't aware, is user acceptor testing. So it's selecting the right individuals, like a small control group, I suppose, in any experiment, and seeing what you can tease out from that experiment, what lessons you can learn to share on, so you don't make that mistake again. And then I fear I might be covering the same ground again, but Daryl, what I'm really interested in, and you probably talked about it in the case study I dipped out of there, is around, I think, the key of promotion and keeping that momentum. Just because you've put a product in place doesn't mean it's still going to work well. You've still got to maintain it, like we maintain all our safety equipment when we're on the field. So if you wouldn't mind, from a Smith Brothers perspective, when you're putting SaaS products into your business, how do you sell on your existing success, and how do you keep that momentum going across the organization?
Again, I think I've touched on it on the first one, Rob, but that just for the user to get a day and a half back during the week from creating a construction phase plan was a massive selling point, a promotional point. And then at the back end of that, the rejection rate from clients, that's improved dramatically. Certainly on RAMs, we very rarely get RAMs returned from any client, and construction phase plan module as well. That's improved no end. I'd say about 80% improvement on rejection rates.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you, Darren. My apologies. It seems like it is trodden ground already when I dipped out. I think keeping that momentum really is crucial. And also, if you can then sell to the board, how your product helps in the future. You might have mentioned this before, but a lot of software systems I've implemented, I then use as evidence in the likes of my SSIPs, like your CHAS and your safe contractors. And like you talked about your APS training, that you showed to the trainers your new product to be innovative. I found that with management systems as well. I was subjected last year to quite a few BSIE auditing, where I showed them software systems that my clients were developing and using to drive their health and safety strategy and for continuous improvement. So absolutely, if you can see a product that you've implemented help in another capacity, absolutely sell on that success and the values of the business. So thank you to you both for sharing that. I think that's great points that we've raised. So I'll pause for a moment. Mason, my apologies, I haven't seen the list. Have there been any questions that have come in?
No questions through at the moment. Any, but we can use this as a bit of a call for any questions. We can have another sort of open Q&A towards the end as well, which I know we'll be doing. So if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them into the Q&A section down at the bottom or into the chat as well, and we can jump onto some of those questions at the end. But I think we're all good for the moment, Rob. But yeah, feel free to send any questions over, or either send them over if you wanted us to answer them outside of the webinar, then we can also answer those after. But yeah, feel free to pop any questions in the Q&A section below.
Brilliant, thanks Mason. And if anything needs to come offline, by all means Mason, please make sure my email address and my LinkedIn profile is sent out. Be great to speak to the whole community where I can. So final takeaways then, talking about digitalisation, I suppose, and how we're embracing SaaS products. I think if you're going to take anything away from the 3 sessions, very much these were 5 key points I wanted to kind of labour the point on, I suppose. And the first one I'm very passionate about, because I think unless you're a role model and showing that the reason we're making this change to digitalisation is for the good and it is positive impacts, is the absolutely first crucial step. And there's 2 influencing factors I wanted to discuss, if I may. The first one's called social proof. And the best example I could think of that is probably quite a few years ago now, when we were driving on the motorway, we were trying to create a campaign to increase waste awareness. And I always remember on those variable signs, it used to say, take your litter home, others do. And I thought that was a great example of social proof that people are campaigning with messages to put pressure on others to do the right thing. And I think if you're struggling with onboarding SaaS software, I very much think that social proofing is a really good factor to use, because people will then sort of be brought through the ranks and use the system as well. I think we actually use social proof as a health and safety professional more often than we actually once thought. Other example I can think of is when I'm doing a lot of safety inspections in the same organization, we develop leadership boards. And there's a reason for that. Everyone wants to be top of the board. So when you start making those results visible, that's kind of social pressure in itself, that those people want to do better. And that's a bit of healthy competition, and that's really influencing. The other example I wanted to share is a factor called unity. And it's a silly example, my apologies, but I couldn't think of anything better. We're probably talking about, I think, a good 20, maybe 30 years ago. There used to be a campaign with Club Biscuit, and that the unity message was, if you like a lot of chocolate on your biscuit, join our club. That was join something where we're equally passionate, equally exclusive about that product. And I think unity works in safety and SaaS products very nicely, because you're saying that the best people, the super users, are using that product for a reason. They can see the value. They want to be part of something bigger. So my key takeaway there is, when you lead by example, always think about social proofing factor and the unity factor as well. Second point, you can see we always accept as a health and safety professional that there's no one size fits all. And I'm afraid, as much as sales that you see out there, there is no single software product that is that single bullet that can resolve all your safety issues. The reason software products are so good is because they focus on doing that one thing very well. We can't simply know and understand everything and roll it out. So it's always to be aware that there's not one solution for all of your problems. It's just a point to be mindful of. I think third point I keep sort of talking about an awful lot is focus on your key objectives. What do you need to do and how do you need to do it? And that comes back to your health and safety strategies that you might be rolling out. But also for me, I think it comes back to our first webinar where we talked about the safety stack. The reason you focus on the safety stack is you understand your roles and responsibilities, and you're deciding what the problem is in those services and what you're going to use to resolve those problems. So if you focus on those objectives for improvement, that safety stack is such a good model to make sure that you're kept on track, you're identifying the problems, and you're acting on them on a prioritization basis. Fourth point here, very much around, I think, emotional intelligence, which once again, I think as health and safety professionals, we are very good at. We have to be very social, work with different types of people in an organization and understand those problems and react to it. we have an accident on site, we tend to be very reactive as well as proactive in the likes of our audits and inspections. So my key takeaway there is look at developing your emotional intelligence, have some more active listening skills to really understand what are the pain points in the organization, and with these solutions that I'm proposing, do they truly close those gaps? And my last point, preparation is so paramount. It really is. If we can't plan how we're going to roll out a solution, who needs to be involved, kind of the who, what, why, where, when, how philosophy, I suppose. If you can answer those questions when you write a business case and propose that solution, it's going to be more successful because you've got that full understanding. So sometimes taking that moment out to understand, okay, what's my rationale? What's the return of investment? What does my implementation plan look like? Presenting that, you're going to feel much more comfortable doing that, and you're going to instill more confidence into the stakeholders, into that buying in process. So I hope those 5 points help. Certainly a lot of food for thought there. I'm conscious I have waffled a lot on that slide. Lauren, Daryl, is there any further points that you'd like to raise, or any certain questions you'd like to challenge me on those?
I think from Smith's point of view, or my personal point of view, Rob, it was a people. I know we've touched on it, but the people factor of just trying to second guess who would take this system and go with it. And I must admit, I got one or two totally wrong. We'd got a couple of older project managers who I thought would be resistant to change, and they totally embraced it. And they were chatting with Rosh at the tea sessions, the break sessions. Can we do this with it? Can we do that with it? And that was just music to my ears. And then, one individual who I thought would really be happy with it wasn't. So, I got one or two people in Smith's wrong on that initial training day. So be prepared, I guess, yeah.
No, great analogy there. Thank you for that, Daryl. It's brilliant. Lauren, I'm sure I've missed something off that you'd like to add in, I'm sure.
No, I think Daryl makes a great point. Like, you have to be ready for people to need a little bit longer to get to grips with the system, whether or not it's a lack of confidence or a skepticism, or for a myriad of reasons. They might not feel comfortable taking that software and running with it, even just personally, not even from a sense of being the person onboarding, but having myself had to get to grips with new software multiple times. I haven't been able to do it the first time, and I've left it for months, and trying to avoid that as much as possible. Be that person who's kind of pushing the agenda within your business, pushing people to say, oh, have you used the software yet this week? How did you find it? Or, oh, well done, Mark's gone and created his first RAMs using the software. It's worked really well. That social pressure as well. There's so many different kind of tricks and tips that I've seen kind of great health and safety managers use, kind of implementing our software. So be prepared to kind of be a bit creative in getting people on board. The people management is definitely the trickiest bit, but it's also the most rewarding bit, because it's the kind of the last piece of the puzzle, really.
Oh, I love both those points. It's kind of the voice of the customer. And I think sometimes we forget that actually our own internal staff members are our customers as a safety professional. It's not just the clients and other contractors we engage with. It's truly listening to those points. So yeah, voice of the customer. There you go. Listen and act. That's a really important last point, I think. No, thank you for both of you for that. That's very insightful. Mason, if I'll pass back to your good self, then that's certainly the end of me.
Yeah, thanks very much. We do have one quick question, Rob and Lauren, probably towards yourself, Lauren. Don't mean to put you on the spot, but this might be for you. Very subjective to what you would be onboarding, I imagine. But question is, how long should an onboarding process take? And I don't know whether you're going to be able to have a straightforward answer to this one or not. Probably not.
Okay, I honestly, yes, I can't give you a straightforward answer. I think an onboarding process should take the amount of time that you planned it to take. So as I said, be prepared. If you need to get something onboarded by a certain deadline, you have to be more prepared. You have to make sure that you've got the resources in place in order to do that. traditionally we say, you know, the onboarding process might take, the actual setup might take not that long at all. It might take less than a month, a couple of working weeks. But in order for us to say that the onboarding process is done is whenever that last person within the business is able to take the software and feel like they can run with it. So it may well be that onboarding doesn't really finish until months and months after the actual software is ready to use. So it is subjective, and it is going to be difficult to put a time frame on. But at the same time, don't be put off putting a time frame on it, because giving people a time to hit, a bar to hit, will help motivate everyone as well.
I think a great point, Lauren. It kind of about managing expectations as well. If we understand that stake in the ground, we assumed it would take, I don't know, 6 weeks, 6 months to make. We can then break that down to understand, okay, well, what were the milestones you thought was needed? Or we can even return that advice to say, well, to embed a safety software product, you need to do X, Y, and Z. We may then highlight points that weren't thought of before, and we think, oh, actually, yeah, that could take a bit longer, and work with one another to then develop that line further. But certainly hearing what your expectation is first to manage those expectations and either hit them or exceed them, I think certainly would be a very useful point to discuss as well.
I think I'd be amiss as well from the rest of my team if I didn't also say, like, listen to your account manager, listen to your customer success manager. They have onboarded many kind of customers for that particular piece of software. They have a lot of experience in understanding how long these things take. Communicate with them, even if you haven't managed to kind of make any progress for a week. Give them a call, see if there's anything that you can be doing to help kind of speed things up. Yeah, that would be my kind of other piece of advice, is to make sure you keep that kind of conversation going.
Brilliant. And by Daryl's case study there, it is all about open communication again and marking those timelines. So such a great question to ask. Mason, apologies, I didn't know who sort of asked that question, but really valid point to project there.
Yeah, no worries. No, perfect. That's a perfect answer. Thanks very much for that. I don't think we've got any other questions that I can see at the moment. If there were any questions that have come up that you wish that you'd ask, that you wish that you did ask, then feel free to send those through via email, and either myself, Rob, or Lauren can reach out to answer any of your questions. But just the final piece to mention, next week. So for those of you who have been that aren't HandsHQ customers at the minute, I can see a few of you on here are. We will be doing a live demo webinar next week. So actually running through our HandsHQ RAMS product. So what you've signed up to at the moment was just these 3 webinars as part of the series. So if you did want to join and have a look, even if you are an existing customer and just wanted a bit of a training session, if you like, of the HandsHQ RAMS product, then that will be taking place next week, next Wednesday, 31st at 10 a.m. And so, yeah, to sign up for that, you'll be able to find that on the HandsHQ blog. We can send around a couple of emails as well, or you'll be able to find that on our LinkedIn page as well to be able to sign up for that. So that's next week, next Wednesday at 10 a.m. live run through of the HandsHQ RAMS product, to be able to answer any of your questions as we go through the products and a few of our new updates as well. But I think that's pretty much it from all of us. Thank you very much for everyone that's joined today and joined all of our other sessions as part of this trilogy of webinars. And thanks to the panel as well. Daryl, thanks very much for joining today. Really appreciate that. Lauren, thank you. And Rob, as always, for running the show. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, everyone. Thank you. And once again, thank you to the